business.
We are in business, guys.
Wonderful. First of all, sorry for the technical difficulties. We're now live on Facebook. Bojo Anin, Wasekom, Dijinikaz, Saging Punjaba, Nishnabé Nindao. My name is Wasekom. I'm calling from the southeastern shores of Lake Huron. I'm joined today by my co-moderator, Ariel Deranger. Would you like to introduce yourself, Ariel?
Yes, Eklanete Dene Sotlaneta, Ariel Tsaekwe Hushe, Deranger Batsini Hasli. My name is Ariel Tsaekwe Deranger, and I'm a member of the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation. And I'm the executive director of Indigenous Climate Action, and really excited to have a really great lineup of speakers today to talk about COVID and Indigenous community responses to the current pandemic. So really excited to have some really amazing speakers today.
So I'm wondering if our speakers would like to introduce themselves first, and then we'll go through how this webinar is going to go and start our webinar. Jeff, take it away.
Watching do temak. We have to miskatagok danse. It go chant michigamak. Magota oni chiskapunik kaise wigian. I just want to bring greetings. My name is Jeff Wastesigut. I come from the Treaty 5 territory of Cross Lake, Manitoba, but currently reside in Saddle Lake, Alberta. And I'm a knowledge keeper / language consultant.
Tanto tu tempe que eu capa apemo tete gomestigwaski knapesis nui hoen onyx koponi kochinia. My name is James Makokis. I'm from the Saddle Lake Cree Nation and family physician in Kinokasik, Yuin Cree Nation, and also in South Edmonton in Treaty 6 territory as well. So it's good to be here as well.
Oni bonjour, manjanap kinege go na be, meanwhile bom gijik indigenous cause. I'm gonna be go ksibiga jwat and don jaba. I'm gonna them. My name is Murdoch. I'm from Serpent River First Nation, and I currently reside at Nimki Ajbakong. Mikwich.
Chu Uklasish, Wakitusis, Mamaknik, Imti, Mitanis. I am Cree descent. My mother is from the Fort McMurray First Nations. My father is from the Athabasca Stand Plant, but I was raised and with my stepfather, Victor Reese, who is Gitsan and Tsimshian in Prince Rupert. And now currently in my husband's territory, we're in New Toronto territory, Nasopharyngeal, and we live in the west coast of Vancouver Island, Port Alberni. True. And I'm a mother.
It's really great to have all of you. And thank you all for taking the time to join this really timely and important conversation. In this, we're looking to our elders, our knowledge keepers, our medicinal people, to really provide us with guidance and direction, as well as to lift up sort of the community responsiveness that we're seeing. And in this time, there's a lot of misinformation. There's things that are being shared that I know that Jesse Cardinal, who was the one that sort of started to bring this conversation together, really wanted to send on and provide some of that insight. So I'm really grateful to each and every one of you. I would also like to say thank you to Indigenous Climate Action, as well as I Don't Know More, for hosting this conversation today.
I just wanted to, this conversation is also incredibly timely because as Indigenous peoples, we are some of the most high-risk categories and at really greater risk of contracting COVID-19 due to the conditions in our communities, from a lack of clean running water, overcrowded housing, and the lack of adequate healthcare, access to healthcare. So while we are one of the most at risk, this isn't the first time our communities have faced crisis, particularly health crises. And I think it's really, really timely that we draw on some of the knowledge from our past experiences, but also from the teachings of our communities and our knowledge holders, to really look at what it means to move through this crisis from an Indigenous perspective and an Indigenous centering of like how we stay safe and come together and utilize our knowledge, our cultures, and our ways of knowing and being to move through this in a good and kind.
And so quickly, my role in the community is to be a helper, and so it's also an honor to be here facilitating space. And I really liked what you said, Ariel, because some of these things were foretold. We were told to prepare for the time entering now, and so in just a short while, we have one of our panelists to open us up in that good way, to tell us part of that story. And but just before we move on, I wanted to let all of our listeners know that throughout this live stream, you are also able to ask questions, and we're going to be taking stock of those questions. So in the last 15 to 20 minutes of this conversation, we will be addressing some of the questions coming from community. And we wanted to really center back to where we come from. And just because we're in this time of social distancing doesn't mean we don't get to visit. And so we wanted to hold this space in that kind of way of caring for ourselves, caring for one another, but also being able to just have a good visit. So this is more going to be of a conversation rather than sort of a presentation. So all of our panelists are going to have an opportunity to share their insight as we go along. So we're just holding space for some of that visiting to take place. And so now, Jeff, I would like to pass it to you and give you the floor and just begin to share some of your experience and story that you wanted to share.
Thank you. Again, everybody that's listening. One of the things that in for time, I want to headline some of what others have told us back in the latter part of the 70s and also the early part of the 80s. One of the things that we come to understand is that we live with the laws of the land, and this has not been exposed to the settlers that came, and we've yet to share laws and again we continue to live by these laws on what we must follow with the prophecies that surrounds this portion of what's happening and occurring today. It was back in one of the ceremonies, I believe in 1981, that the elder spoke, and he had told us about a prophecy that was to come. That there was 4 stages that were going to come, that we must start to prepare and understand. Our medicine through our language, not what they're called today from a foreign language. We need to reconnect with those medicines of the land through languages. And one of the things that I come to experience in some of the prophecies that they talked about, that it was going to come in 4 stages. And yet I've seen all through just now the 4 stages here. They said that there was a law that was going to be broken. We define these things, he said, in 2 categories, especially the animal kingdom. And one of the things that we refer to as awiyasisak, we refer to that as wiyas, the lenders of life, the animals that and that's what we call awiyasisak. There's another term that they use for the ones we were not supposed to eat. They call them pisiskiwak. In our language, refers to the ones we don't eat, the ones that we do not bother because we hold them so sacredly. And one of the terms that they say, hence the word pisiskiwak. And this is how he explained it, the elder. And he said, we bother these ones, so you got to follow the laws of the land. And you know, one of the birds that we don't eat is the eagle, you know, and even bats. If you step under this law, there's going to be a law broken, and they refer to this law as Ochinewin and Bastawin. So Ochinewin, the closest terminology to Ochinewin is pathogenic, that an airborne disease was going to come by breaking these laws. And we've seen it arrive, first of all, with the first stage of that came as H1N1. And I started to really pay attention to what these elders told us back then. The second stage was H1N2. We've seen that come and go. There was a third stage that came, was H1N3. A lot of our people succumb to these illnesses. Now the fourth stage that was to come is this COVID-19. They didn't know what they were going to be called. He says, pay attention because they're going to come. And how we prepared for that was through the lands of the medicine. And I'm saying that there's not one particular medicine because we live in a variety of land base. So we were able to utilize this connection. And part of our creation story, our teacher was named Muisage Chak, and he told that the illness that was going to come. He foretold it first, and this is how our people connected to that. So what are these stages of preparation? You know, sadly to say, we can have the saddest story and tell to the government. It's not going to move the government. It's not going to move them whatsoever. So within this Ochinewin, Mastawin, you know, we have to take the initiative to be able to reconnect to that land. Now, this balance of disconnecting from that land it is now time for us to reconnect through those languages, because what we call them today are not what they are. They have certain names to a lot of the medicines on land, and being able to comprehend that is always done through the language, because language is what connects you to that relationship to the land. So in saying so, our elders always afforded us that information, what's to come, and in preparation to that through ceremony. And today ceremonies are delivered in a non-Indigenous language fashion. So we tend to want to create a perception. And our elders also told us, never allow fear to control your life. And it seems what's being put out there in social media today, our people are really running scared and really afraid, because we become so codependent on the Euro-Canadian way that we need to call out to the government the state of emergencies and so forth. You know, as long as we have this land, our elders always told us, as long as we have our land, we need to depend on it and creating that relationship. So again, there's many formulas out there, and there is no one correct formula. Our knowledge keepers, we've always been told that there's a grandmother and a grandfather that sits over to the west that'll come and tell you what this knowledge of this sickness is. But there's also a knowledge keeper, a grandmother and a grandfather that sit from that northern doorway that'll come and talk to you about the same thing, using a different fashion, using a different remedy. And also from the east, the eastern doorway, they will come with their knowledge and tell you the exact same thing of what's happening here today, of that preparation. And also the southern doorway, there's the grandmother and the grandfather that sit over there. So there is no one right formula. It's how we make that connection to the spiritual realms and the rounds. And again, becoming to believe And I think that within that belief, there is what we call hope. And that is what we still have today, is hope. So these things, we need to reconnect to that land and create that balance. And also one of the things that I want to make sure of is that when we come together as knowledge keepers, there's the Western part. And today I work with several doctors in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and some here in Alberta that have that Western knowledge to be able to see both sides. Our elders say that over here up ahead, and being able to create that, walking in both worlds, the traditional world and the industrial world. One of the things that should have been a pandemic was suicides. There are more people die, our First Nation people die from suicides and drug abuse, but that never hits the headline. We've had many of our people, succumb to that part. That's not being talked about. Our living conditions, the way we live in this third world, in Canada, in our homelands, we're living in a third world country. Today I still have to have my water delivered to a tank. I don't have proper running water, and these things that, a lot of these diseases are constructed diseases, and that's when some of the doctors say, and these are not hitting headlines today because they are constructed diseases. If I had clean running water instead of out of a tank, the health of this community, this First Nation, would be a lot more, but we don't have that. That the immunities of that world, it's still yet to be. For some reason, our elders always told us to be cautious of these things. We've been on a boil water advisory since we got these tanks, and it's not getting any better. So with that open discussion is don't allow this fear to control your lives. This has to do with, it's going to come and it's going to surpass. And many of these illnesses came and they will surpass. And that's what our elders are telling us. But don't put yourself in harm's way. Allow it to go through. Just like the fire, when that fire came, every other animal ran from it except the buffalo. What the buffalo done is they approached that fire and they moved sideways and allowed that fire to go through. Then they went back to their normal life. So again, this indigenous knowledge, we need to take a look at it, but it's not being addressed today. So we run, we create havoc, just like the Muniawak. We can't run from it. We have to face it head on. And it's our lands, our ceremonies, and our medicines that have to be put forth. And that's what our elders have taught us, eh? And again, meaning being able to walk in the industrial world versus our traditional world. When it comes to these things, the positiveness is we're gonna make it. This is the fourth cycle to this. We're gonna make it. So again, that knowledge is so much out there. We want to share these medicines to our people, to how to protect and how to preserve your life, and not to run from it, because we cannot outrun it. So, I just wanted to really stress that about ceremonies and the connection, reconnecting back to the land, because that's where it's at. One day, we're going to be happy again. We're going to see our children flourish, my grandchildren. These are the ones that I protect with these medicines today. But it is available. It is available, this knowledge. So with that, I just want to stop there. And I thank you for anybody that's listening out there. Hi.
Thank you, Masicho. There are over 1,000 viewers on Facebook Live, so there are many people listening. Also, thank you so much, Jeff, for your knowledge and sharing those prophecies and stories with us. I know that there are many prophecies in Indigenous cultures those over that talk about these signs of great change, talk about illness on the land. Indigenous Climate Action is a justice organization, and one of the things that comes from many of the communities we've worked with is they've said, when the land becomes sick, science and ecologists are now finding that when we erode or degrade the ecosystems, when we destroy our forests and our landscape, the increases of viruses and diseases also start to increase. So we're not just losing biodiversity. Our communities have not only just been advocating for the protection of our rights as individuals and communities, but we're talking about protecting and preserving our lands and ecosystems that are completely intertwined with our identities, our culture, our knowledge bases, our languages, and all the things that Jeff talked is directly connected to the land. Your north, south, west, all of that is encompassed together. And so we have such a great lineup of speakers, from a medical doctor, food sovereignty advocate, to a land-based language advocate. You know, for Isaac is working on the land and the Culture Camp Forever. Natanis is working in her community. She's behind her is her great setup of the food stuff, the food sovereignty work she's been working on. And James is not just the winner of the Amazing Race, but he's an Indigenous family physician who we are so excited to have you all here. And part of the questions, like thinking about everything Jeff has said, thinking about how important our culture and identity is about grounding us and allowing us to move through this in a calm and really good way. The one question I want to ask to you all is, how are you right now personally? How are you utilizing your Indigenous knowledge, your cultures, and your practices as a way to respond to to this current pandemic that we're faced with now? And anyone can start.
Okay,
Isaac, James, we'll go with James.
All right, so hi Nuchawis for sharing. It was really good to listen to your teachings, and thank you so much for being so open with all of us about those things. You know, I'm also thankful to all the participants that came and shared, and I'm really excited about this. I think it's really important, you know, one of the things that I heard from Jeff was not to have fear, which is such a good teaching, because when we're stressed, our immune systems go down, right? Which is one of the reasons why when people have colds, they take vitamin C, because they're stressed and their bodies become depleted of that, which is in white blood cells. So it's really important for us to stay calm and to support one another, and also take seriously those recommendations from public health about, you know, staying in your home as much as possible, social distancing. And those actually are some of our teachings as well. So, you know, our chief in Kikiwin was sharing what his aunt, who went through the Spanish flu in early 1900s, and he asked her, you know, how did you guys get through that? And it was, you know, people stayed in their home and they helped as much as possible by getting food, taking our own nehia maskikia, our own medicines, but one another from becoming sick. And so there's some, you know, people in our communities who say that social distancing is not our norm and it's not our cultural ways and things like that. But we always look after our elders, we always look after our children, we always look after our most sick. And how we're going to do that in this instance is preventing the spread of community disease by staying in our home and visiting each other and, you know, enjoying this time off. You know, take it as you have a break, you get to slow down, you get to look after yourself, you get to do those things that you never had a chance to do. But one of the first things that we did in our home was to ask our elders, what are the medicines that we took when we had things like previous epidemics and pandemics in the past? So tuberculosis, smallpox, measles, all those things. What are some of those medicines that are...
James, it's not just the winner. Can someone mute Isaac's line? It was Isaac's phone.
Oh, okay. So what are some of those medicines that we've, that we took in the past? Because, teachings in our areas, we want to be taking those same medicines again. And I know, as Jeff mentioned, those will all be different based on where you live. So whatever protection medicines that you use, please use those. And I think he also mentioned about walking in both worlds. And that's the teaching of our Kisei Manto Yasu and the Fakwase Hun, that create the 2-row wampum, right? That we have both of these medicines, and we're going to use both of those things. So, stay in your home, wash your hands if you go out, 20 seconds, sing yourself happy birthday twice, try not to touch your face. We want to prevent, there's a distinction between how people are getting the virus, which is usually travelers. So people are coming from affected countries and they're bringing the disease home with them. What we want to prevent is community-based spread. So people who have not traveled, who have got the disease in the community because they've gone out and they've interacted with other people, and then they've brought that back into their home and community. So we don't want this coming into our communities. We want to protect our elders. We want to protect our children. We want to protect our people that have compromised immune systems and are sick. So I think those are the important messages, that I wanted to get over. And it's interesting, like it's really cool to see how different communities and nations are using our own Nehiyao Meskikia. I know at Onion Lake, the school, when the schools were still open, that there was like skunk juice at the entrance to help with stuff. So I think it's really cool how our community is responding and using our own Nehiyao Mamtanesa and our own knowledge around this stuff.
Thank you, Dr. James Makokis. Natanis or Isaac.
Hi. So I'm at home and we have 9 children in our house. So right now, I might have to go be quiet, but they're actually being really quiet. So now I'm curious what they're doing. But yeah, so social distancing for us is staying home. We're not going to big gatherings. We have to get some supplies, some more groceries. We've already been in the last few days, especially as heightened every day, every hour. Things change. And so we're looking after our elders in our family. But I think one of the things that's coming up for us is when you're talking about fear. So my children are afraid. And I had one of my kids have the hands raw, so raw that on the top of the hands they weren't used to washing so vigorous. So they said 20 seconds, but he was doing more than that. And he was doing excessively. And so I also realized that it's important to wash our hands, but another thing for my family, it was important to get dirty, to be on the land. So when our first speaker spoke, and he talked about the connection to land, it's really important. So I know social distancing in these Western consumer culture ways that we gather, it breeds sickness. And I think when we're in small, confined, closed spaces, we do tend to get sick. But when we go to the forest, I allow my children that freedom, the freedom to just jump and run, and we're not closely contained, and I allow them to build their immunity from their spirit, because this fear watching TV, being closely, and then they're stuck to just playing games, and they're sharing conversations amongst each other. And so I feel like I give them the knowledge that here's some medicines. The kids know what kinds of plants that are good for and for their colds, or to what teas are good, what berry bushes, and it's a fun game we play. So my 4 youngest, we just go daily, and I wanted to bring that out to the community. So I was having a daily forest walk and inviting community members, especially those that are indoors, and saying, come, we can practice social distancing in the forest. And And let's go look at what's growing now. What are the new berries that are starting to shoot that could build immunity and that tastes good. It's not always about like, this is gonna, you know, this medicine, but it's just like, this is good. It tastes good. It feels good. It's our food. So I've been doing this for a long time. So behind me, I have lots of, this is from last year. And this is some foods that are from a couple years ago. So I always go, what did our ancestors do? Well, our ancestors, they were prepared for these long winters. And so in 2010, what we did is like, could we do what our ancestors did? Hunt, preserve, harvest enough food to last a winter. So in 2010, we went on an indigenous diet as a family to see if we could do it. That then gave us the knowledge to say, okay, what is indigenous? What's introduced? Let's put these foods back into our diet as a family. And how do we gather respectfully? And when do we gather? And because I don't think, like, if everybody goes to the forest and starts, gathering all this, then we always have to be careful about, those that we're interconnected. So with all the living beings there. And yeah, it's a long conversation, but I think for me in 2006 is when I wasn't raised like this. I wasn't raised, knowing this. So I had to acquire this knowledge. And I don't say I'm a knowledge keeper. I'm a knowledge sharer. So as soon as I learn something, I'm going to share it. And so why I have a lot of these things is because I bring them to the school and bring it to the kids and share as much as I learn. And but it's important that to be clean, but for my kids, it's important for them to get dirty in dirt, in the soil, outside, and be connected when we talk about connection and with that life, instead of feeling so isolated inside. But we have that opportunity. I know that we live close. Like, they could go to the bush outside the front yard. They can go to the bush in the front yard, and a lot of communities can't, and they don't have that access. But even in our communities here, I just want to, let them know that it's important for us to go to the ocean, cleanse with the ocean, stuff like that. So,
Tannis, as I'm listening, and there's a common theme that I'm hearing from each one of our speakers, which is the basis of our relationships to the land, and so we're hearing about hope, and we're also hearing about taking this very seriously, but also, this opportunity to connect with the land. Some of our listeners are wondering, Natanis, about if you can talk about cedar, and if you can talk a little bit about some of the medicines that you're teaching your children. We're seeing a lot of sort of information being put out specifically around cedar, and so we were hoping that you could touch base on that a little bit. Thank you.
So we live here in the West Coast amongst the cedar. The cedars are what gives us so much, right? The homes, our vehicles, our clothing. And I actually have a basket here. So it's a birch bark basket from my mother's territory, and it has the cedar boughs from here that I collect. And it's just, we use it for steaming. It's really good. It's a disinfectant. It's very, I don't like to speak on things that I don't personally, like, I'm not going to say all the properties and break it down to the constituents, because I don't understand that. But what I know about it is, as weavers, and I have some cedar bark back there, and shortly we'll be gathering cedar for weaving, and it's a very potent tree, so much so that a lot of people are allergic to it. And so when you work with it, it's really good to oil up your hands, because you can get a lot of like rashes, and your skin will react to it. So we never drink it. So that's one of the things that we we don't drink it, because when you have cedar bark in the and this is just the teaching from here. I know other people are different, but for us, we don't drink it. We use it as a tool. It's a revered tree. It's many different things, and but we could put it, and we use the essence of the scent, and it's very spiritual. The boughs that we use in many different ceremonies, and we steam it to cleanse the air. We put it in our baths for just that scent of spirit and for grounding. And but when we work with the bark and it's in water for a time, it gets really thick. But we don't even put it in our sinks, because it corrodes, and it could actually clog up our sinks, and it corrodes the pipes. So we don't put the water in through our we have to dispose of it very carefully. So we know that it's a really strong plant, but one of the things is we don't drink it. So that's around cedar for my understanding, from my teachings.
I think that's really important. And like, I know Jeff's got his finger up, because even Jeff talked about, north, south, east, west. We all have our different medicines and our teachings, and we have to rely on the knowledge of our people where we live, and their relationships and with the medicines where they are. Jeff, I do want to offer Isaac a spot to speak first. Is that okay? Or do you want to respond directly to Dentanis? You're muted too, so you got to unmute yourself.
I can wait.
Okay. Isaac, I just want to open it up for you and like for you to share some of the ways in which you're using your knowledge, your culture, and your practices as a way to respond to this pandemic.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that I'm just really excited about what everybody's saying. It just sounds really good. I know for us, where I live, for my home, everything started with the prophecy. And of course, we call that Onwiwichigan, which means things to come. And so we know that these things are coming. And there is a lot of practices in the past. And so as a young person, I wanted to research what happened during these pandemics. What did they do? Where did they go? What medicines did they use? What kind of precautions did they do? And of course, in our Ojibwe belief, we understand that there's an old man in the sky. And this old man is called Babonene, which is the wintering spirit. And so when that wintering spirit comes, our families, we split off into the forest, and we separate ourselves, so that when old man winter comes in to clean, that it'll take people, and we can't be together at that time. And so that was one of our cultural practices that we have where I come from. But also during the times of the plagues in the past, they would use their own dish. They would make their own dishes, and only they would use them, and they wouldn't share them. And of course, the remedies or the medicines that they would use, in our household, we started to this summer collect those remedies for the plagues, and we start making them and start using them. We use every sort of knowledge that we have, including social distancing. We're very, very careful. Right now, we're currently in lockdown, meaning that we're not going to have contact with people for at least 14 days. And, for us, this is really important. And, our elders always told us, especially this one of the elders at the camp, she just explained all of this to us just not too long ago. And she said, "Giken mananik, gawin wika gimendandad zinoan, giranak na gawinanin. We see a gigo, neshiag, matigog, nebe nesiwan. The shinach shigaso kinagego nanachka de mampia king." She said all of the laws are being broken, and that the animals and the birds, everything is being compromised. We have to go back to the way of life of the Anishinaabe. And that's what she talked about. She said it's really important. and dudagoying minwaki and dudmoat. She says we have to go, the elders are reminding us to go back to the land. And so for us, that's, the land is our biggest healthcare system. And so we know that through the practices of what happened before, that the land is the answer. The medicines are the answer. And that, you know, of course, being part of something very spiritual is the answer. And so it's, you know, of course, it's, for a lot of people, this is very scary. But we have to also remind ourselves that we've been through this, and our culture has the teachings, and it has all of those good things in it that will help us through this. And so even during the treaty signing in 1850, there was nobody to be seen in my community, because they were all in the bush, because they didn't want to be around the boats where the sicknesses were, and they weren't taking the blankets. And so we have to be very careful what we're taking and where we're going. And that's built right into our culture. So we're starting to practice that in my home. And it you know, we feel safe, we feel secure because of this. And we know that we're at very low risk because of this. And that, you know, when we do our ceremonies, when we use our medicines, and when we listen to those old stories, that, you know, we get medicine from them. And so I encourage everybody to get out there and to hear those old stories, those Atsukanan, which are spirit stories that teach us, you know, how to react during these times. And even the stories themselves will bring medicine to the home. And so we also believe that our home is a spirit too. So we hang medicines in our home so that the spirit of our house can help us. But I remember a long time ago, old people used to say, you know, if those animals get offended, they might try to go and make people and try to have revenge on people. So you make a fire near your home, so that if those spirits come, they'll go into the fire and they'll go back to where they're supposed to come from. And so a long time ago during the plagues, that's what they did, is that they would make fires around their homes so that that sickness would go in there and it wouldn't bother the home. And so a lot of people will say that those are like superstitions, but call me superstitious. That's what I believe. And again, just like the first speaker was saying, you know, it's important to go back to our own culture and traditions on how we deal with this. But it's also very important to listen to what modern science and medicine is saying. At this time, we have to use everything available. So just like how James was talking about, you know, we have to make sure that we use everything. And then also at this time too, you know, we have something called the Godonagana, a dish with one spoon wampum agreement that we have with our nations. This is a time when we trade and we help each other, we support each other so that we can eat. There should be no need for people to starve, because they say that being hoarding and being greedy is part of what causes the sickness. So if we want it to go away, we have to give. And we have to give, you know, the old people used to say, even if you only have a little bit and somebody doesn't have anything, you give it to them. You don't hoard anything. And you know, that protects you. And I believe in those things. And that's what we're doing. Also, I'm thinking about having a drop box outside my house, which means that if somebody's going to drop something off, it goes into the drop box. And I don't touch it for like a few days. And when I do, I sanitize it. Just so that I'm sure that the virus, if there was a virus on there, the chances are it wouldn't be there by the time I get to it. And so we're washing our hands, we're not touching our mouth, we're listening to what medical science is saying, but we're also diving deep into our culture and our traditions too. And we're listening to those old stories, those old Atsukanan, to try to understand what's the best way to protect ourselves. And, you know, like I believe that that we're in a story now. You know, this story will be told of when the two-legged try to destroy everything. And, you know, I believe that as Anishinaabe people, in this story, it's time to go back to the land, to the language. It's time to go back to those old ways, because really, it's really going to help us in the future, especially when these things happen. And that's what our culture tells us. That's what they did in the past. And I believe that that everything, every bit of knowledge that goes forward is good knowledge. And so don't discredit what people are saying. You know, listen, pay attention. And if it feels good to you, if it feels right for you, you know, use your culture as a way to navigate through the information you're getting. And you can't go wrong. You know, we're going to be okay because we have our culture. We have the foundation of who we are as a people to guide us. And so that's why it's very important to take care of your languages, your cultures, and the land. You know, our water protectors deserve so much recognition and support, because when we protect that land and those animals, when we protect the waters, it's going to prevent these things from happening. And so we know that the relationship between the land and our own bodies is equal. And so to help protect things, we have to protect all life, not just our own selves. That's what I think. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Isaac. It's always good to hear your voice and you know, your perspective. And as we've been going along, there's been a lot of questions coming up about our urban relatives and young people, you know, who want access now to these medicines, to these prophecies that have been shared, you know, and because of social distancing, you know, a lot of people are thinking of going back home to try and find, you know, places where they can be that are safe, where they can practice who they are. And so I just wanted to go back to you, Jeff, really quickly, because you did have a response to what Natanis was saying. But I was wondering if all our panelists could think about, you know, ways to create access, and in these times, like, are there online resources, specific things that we could be sharing with our relatives through ICA and I don't know more, to help facilitate that sharing of knowledge. And one thing I just wanted to contribute really quickly was that you know, we've been thinking a lot about at home sending medicines to the city, because a lot of our families are saying, well, don't come here and get us all sick, you know, like, but we'll still care about you and we'll still love you, and we'll make little care packages to send there for you. So it's an encouragement, and that's sort of what I believe a lot of people are looking for in these times, is some encouragement and support. I would like to turn it over to you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of the knowledge around cedar. And I know that this is a Latin term, cedar, right? And in reference to the language, there's a long segment of understanding Indigenous knowledge, and it's done through language, and a lot of the knowledge transfer doesn't stay in the mind, it actually stays in art that you walk with today. That's why we don't pull up a book and say, okay, this says this, you know. This Indigenous knowledge you carry in heart. One of the things that I come to understand about the creation story of cedar is through the thunderbird. This came from the thunderbird itself. It landed 3 times within our area in Canada, how it's been labeled off. In our east, they call this Swabbing east. They have a cedar out east. And within halfway there in Manitoba, in and around the Chimawawan area, they call it Apitagisigis. And what they refer to that is Gishigok, where it came from and where its life was in. And being able to understand that, and Gatimao Gishigak, we call it the Western cedar, we call it Asagis. So again, thunder, when you take a look at the seed itself, the leaves, the flat leaves, they're almost like a thunderbolt. And sometimes if it's not written or prescribed, we have rather take something in a pill capsule, or that's been put it into a metaphor. Because when we talk about Maskigi, it talks about the strength, spiritual strength and power of the land. One of the things that I want to show you here today is what we call juniper. They refer to this as juniper. In our language, we call this kakahiminatik. They refer to it as kakahiminatik. They don't say juniper. But what it refers to is kakike minoyatik, that forever this holds a lot of strength and power. And now we've been, when we were given a formula, and I don't mind sharing formula, especially to our people out there, on how they bring these things. It was the pine needles that were addressed to us to say, prepare these pine needles, and they're really available just even on the outskirts of any city, urban area. And the cedar's constantly there, the balsam is there, and the juniper is there. And if they're unavailable, then these health food stores will carry it. But it was these pine needles. When we say minaik in our language, it talks of the pine tree, and it was the pine cones and the needles that were going to provide this protection to us. So here's the ones that I want to share with the group and the people that are listening out there. It's the needles off of the juniper, the needles, and we mix this with the cedar, the balsam needles, and the pine needles, and we create a smudge of these things that's going to, because even today when we live around these trees, it causes, it has this protection from all airborne things. So when we burn this into a smudge, it's going to destroy this bacteria, whether you use it by drinking or smudging. Once you do this, and the creation to this, when you smoke fish, there's no bacteria that's going to live on the smoked fish. So here, when an unprotected smoked fish, it's going to attract bacteria. It's going to rot fast. So this is the balancement of understanding what these smudges are about. Once you inhale this, especially around children, because one of the things is, I encourage you, because there's a knowledge to this. This will upset the balance of a woman's menstrual cycle. So do not drink this if you're a woman, because it's going to upset the balance of your menstrual cycle. So what we do is we use this now for the smudge. And in order to share this information, right now it's not a time, because we are all creators, helpers. I don't need tobacco from you for this knowledge. I want our people to survive and pull through this thing. That's why we need to come together holistically as one, So I have no problem sharing knowledge. I have no problems sharing that, because I want our children, to be the highlight, that we protect these ones to the best of our capabilities. And I wanted to share that with you. So again, within the urban areas, you need to come home once in a while to the land and look for these things, gather these things, and then go back to your urban settings. That is my recommendation. So with that, I just wanted to share that.
Jimmy, Gwetch, Jeff, we were having a bit of technical difficulties in hearing everything that you said, but I really appreciate that somehow it was able to work itself out a little bit. And I was sitting here thinking, holy, this might be a little bit too sacred for a Zoom call. We have a request from Isaac Murdoch just to comment really quickly on your knowledge and experience with cedar and some of these medicines.
Yeah, and if James or Natanis, you want to jump in, let us know too.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. So I remember years ago when I used to go trapping, I remember this old man. His name was Miyawasage, and he told me about cedar. He said that it can be very, very dangerous if you eat the sap. He said it can kill a man. Because I remember I was going to take a little piece off and I was going to eat it, and he slapped my hand. And he said, "Don't do that." He said, "That's very strong." And so I know where I come from, we have different types of cedar. And so sometimes the women will make a cedar, but they'll just boil it lightly. But they usually don't give it to pregnant women. But that's only in our region, the type of cedar that we have. So I can't speak for every type of cedar tree. Also, for a lot of our medicines too, if somebody's not feeling well, they're not, they're sick and they have a bunch of problems. Sometimes it's not one thing that'll fix everything. And so we're always very careful. Do they have diabetes? Do they have high blood pressure? Do they have this? Do they have that? So I always try to find out what's wrong with them first before I just give them the medicine, because I don't want to hurt them in any way. And so I always try to find out. So for example, in our homelands, we have lots of different mixtures and medicines. And sometimes you don't give it to everybody because they may have other underlying health issues that, so sometimes you have to understand completely what's wrong with them before you just give the medicine. Especially with diabetes, because some of these mixtures involve maple syrup, or they involve, nodweed jabik, which is like a snake root. And those things can infect your sugar quite rapidly. Or the high blood pressure, there's different things. So I always tell people, go to somebody that knows. But there are lots of medicines that are safe, that don't affect, all those different things. But it's always good to just speak to somebody and say, hey, I've got this, and this, and this is what's wrong with me. And reach out, because, that's why medicines don't work unless they're given away. So the best thing to do is to reach out to people that have them and speak to them. And of course, many of them would be happy to help. For example, one of the plague medicines that we have, it's got 10 ingredients in there. But those ingredients that are in there, we have Puagamjibik, we have Wabus, or we have Obamabik, we have Zizlakmade, Kandamo, we have Jingwakminan in there. We have all sorts of ingredients that was used for the plague. But we didn't have diabetes at that time. And so some of those medicines in there will aggravate diabetic people. So, when you're asking for medicines, make sure you let them know everything about you. That way you can get the proper help that you need. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Thank you so much.
I really like that. I actually really like that. I'd like to give that a name today, traditional triage.
So James, just want to know if you want to add anything just about medicines and like precautions around like thinking about people's conditions before just giving away like, oh, boil cedar, because we're getting a lot of questions like, is it safe if someone's pregnant? Can I boil it in my house? Is it okay to put it in a diffuse? Like there's just lots of questions around that. And I just want to hear your response to that a little bit.
Sure, thank you. I kind of wanted to get back to the question about, about the access in an urban area. So I live near Edmonton. There's a river valley. There's like hundreds of kilometers of trails. I do ultramarathon trail running. And so I'm in a lot of those trails all the time. And there's so much medicines that are in an urban area, probably near many cities across the country, that people just don't know that they're there. And foods, there's lots of food. So like one of the things that I think people are worried about is access to foods in grocery stores, especially when they see the supplies diminishing. And as I'm running, I'm like, that's where the rabbits are. If I need to go snare rabbits, you know, that aren't those crazy kind in Walmart parking lot, I'm gonna come here and do that. Or this is where the deer are. But also, you know, it's gonna be time for spring to come, and fiddleheads are gonna be coming out. Like, there's tons of places in the river valley for fiddleheads. You know, lots of those medicines that people need grow around this area. So the one that Jeff was just talking about, you know, juniper, another way that it can be called is Nasopharyngeal as well. And that grows in this area around Edmonton and in the river valley. And so I think what it's encouraging people to do, especially in this time, it's winter, is that, you know, we really do need to prepare. Our people have always prepared and gathered at all aspects of the year, so that when stuff like this happens, that we have those medicines with us, because that knowledge has always been in our families. Yes, we've had specialized people who acted as medicine people or medicine women or medicine men and all of those things, but we all have that ancestral knowledge within us, and we all have the right to reclaim that knowledge and start using those things, and especially to share it too. So in terms of like the teachings that, you know, my grandfather has about our creation and how we're formed from those medicines, that we're a part of them, and they form our organs, they form our bones. Those are in our songs, ceremonies, and teachings, that, you know, we shouldn't be scared of them as well, and that they're there to help us. So in terms of, you know, that little aspect of it, that's how I approach medicine, and when using it with people as well, just from those teachings, that we're formed from the medicine, and that when we use them, we actually can become stronger, as well as I agree with what all the other panelists have said too. But most importantly, if you're in the city, like we have these here, you know, you need to be aware of the cycle of them. So stinky feet medicine, you know that it's going to smell in the fall when you're out in the bush, right? It has that smell. And that's a lot of the ones that people are using, upstegua, you know, the other name for it, or, you know, the one that Uncle Jeff was talking about. So there's so many, and I think it just encourages people to be prepared, and that this is a learning point for all of us.
I think it's a really good point, and I'm going to try and move into some more questions here, but like around the fact that, yeah, Natanis has got her finger up, I'll pass it over to you after, is that this moment is allowing us that time to reflect. During this heightened time of like scarcity of like grocery stores and what medicine should we use, it's allowing us as an opportunity as Indigenous folks to go back, to reflect. What are those foods? Who are the knowledge keepers in my community? And I think that despite the fact we have to keep social distancing, we have a really, really amazing opportunity in front of us right now to learn so much from the people in our community that hold that knowledge. And you can pick up a phone, you can get on a video conference call. Technology is allowing us to share that information across provinces, across the oceans. I know I have folks on here from Australia that are listening. And like, these are part of our practices. No matter where you are, there are Indigenous knowledge holders that have that information, and those that are also in a process of reclaiming it. And I just want to, like, I know that Natanis had like her hand up, so I'm going to just pass it to Natanis, but I want to bring another question in right after that. So yeah, go ahead, Natanis.
Hi. Now I forgot. Yeah, so in the beginning of this talk, I was really nervous, and I find that I have a relationship with the plant that that I established earlier on, before I even knew about plants being a medicine. And this one plant, I call it sit your ass down, because it was when I was in a heightened state of anxiety, and I took this tea that my grandfather used to have, and it steeped too long, and I drank it, and I just went, and everything just felt like, okay, I can deal with what I need to deal with. It gave me a sense of just calmness. So as I was making tea behind me, I went back to that plant that I have a relationship with, and I've established through, you know, many years. I'll go back to that plant, and when I found out what it is and where it grows and how to harvest it, then I could go back and that was this a sense of, I know when I'm in a state like this that life is going to always come at me with many challenges. I am a mother of a lot of little children that are really afraid of this time, and so I need to sit my ass down. I need to calm down. I need to look at what's going on, and so I rely on this medicine, but I can't go, hey, this is going to work for you. This is going to be, this is going to do the same thing for you as it does for me. Because I think that one of the things that I've learned in medicine, especially plants, they're like human beings. They have many different traits and skills and gifts. And some human beings don't connect as well. And some plants don't connect to human beings. And so I always say that I could package up some things and I could send it off to somebody, but it's really important for me to introduce you to the plant, introduce you how you could gather it yourself. So whenever you're in a time of need, you're not looking for me, or you're not looking for herb stores or somewhere, or feel the anxiety of not having access to it. So if you gain knowledge of this plant and you create a relationship with this plant, and I go, so I'm one of those people, is I'll introduce you and I create relationships with plants, but I don't give or sell or anything like that. And because I find that there's so many different, our communities and individuals and families have different practices around medicines, and that has been established for a long time. And it's not just that one prescribed, that this is going to do this, right? So like I said, I'm drinking this tea. And another thing I wanted to say is that I was in an urban place. I didn't know these things, and it takes time. And I think if we run out and go right away and start taking things that in our haste inadvertently do damage. So it's really good to talk to your elders, talk to your knowledge keepers, read books. There's a lot of knowledgeable Mammothly people that are in our communities too. So it's about really, taking the time. And I love this time for pause, right? Pause and connection. And so when I say, when you have a relationship for a plant, you're gonna care for it. You're gonna love that plant. You're gonna know where it grows. So next thing is you're gonna protect that plant. And I think when we have more connection to our lands, we're gonna be there and we're gonna protect it as a relative. And yeah, so it's true.
Thank you, Natanis. And that actually, there's, Jesse and some other folks have been wondering about like the importance of protecting our land and reconnecting and how we do that. And I'm really glad you talked about how it takes time, because we don't want to rush this. I grew up very traditional, and I remember when I was little, we spent a lot of time with medicine people, and someone was sick with they had a disease, and they came to the medicine person, and the medicine person said they didn't know that disease. They didn't even know the spirit of that disease. And so they asked the person to come back and have ceremony so that they could understand the illness first. And then they went back to the medicines and they spoke to the medicines to understand which medicines knew how to communicate with the spirit of this illness. And it's the same as a scientist looking at an illness and trying to understand it, and then looking at the medicines that react with it. It's just, we use a different way of communicating and analyzing the information. And I think it's so powerful, but it takes time, and that we have to allow ourselves to understand that relationships and being able to communicate with the spirits of both the plants and their sicknesses and the different ways in which they show up in people. It's not an immediate, there's not one solution. It's not like take a bath in cedar here or smudge with this here. It's about learning how we communicate with all of these things, and understanding in this crisis of a pandemic, do we even have COVID? And so I did want to pass it to James really quickly, because he wants to just let people know about swabbing and testing before we lose all of the time in here, and like what can be done in order to just get tested to confirm that you are a carrier, and what to do if you are.
Yeah, thank you. So there's very specific criteria for being swabbed, so not everybody will meet the criteria. And I know that in Alberta, there's a self-assessment tool that you can use with Alberta Health Services to see if you qualify for that, or if you even need to. But more importantly, I wanted to talk about access to swabs. So, and first of all, what is the swab? The swab is a nasopharyngeal swab, much like the influenza virus, which is a small little Q-tip that goes all the way up your nose, all the way to the back of your throat. It kind of is a bit irritating. It's not going to kill you. And then we just need to get a sample back there. There has been some challenges for some of our people who live on reserve to get swabs or access to swabs. And I just want to let you know that if you do qualify for a swab and you need to go to your local town, which is an off-reserve public health unit, that they shouldn't be turning you away because you live on reserve. A lot of our communities and First Nations reserves don't have any swabs right now. We haven't been sent swabs, so we're not able to test our people. But having said that, some reserves do have the capability and capacity to swab people if needed. Really important that if you're going to go and you meet the criteria, to call ahead to your health unit. Don't just go in, so that it prevents other people from getting sick. So some clinics are making exceptions in terms of they'll swab people in your car, so you don't need to go in, or you need to go in at the end of the day when there's less people there. So just, if you meet the criteria and you need to go in, please call ahead and let the health staff know so that they can prepare appropriately, and that diminishes the risk of others getting sick as well.
Thank you so much, James.
Yeah, hi again. So I was just kind of fielding some of the questions that were coming through, and we're in this time where community is really being called to come together and respond in a good way, but we're sort of limited as to how we're going to do that. And so there's been some really beautiful community responses so far. So I wanted to sort of offer that up to the panelists to reflect on and to share some of the things about what community is doing. But I wanted to start off with Isaac, because I know that when we're talking about traditional knowledge and medicines, we're also trying to come from this place of community care to not sort of overburden our traditional people. So say if somebody in communities gets sick, what are the traditional people going to do? They're going to be the first ones to get sort of called and relied upon. And so I know in communities there's overcrowding, lack of access to good drinking water, and so I wanted to create this sort of space for Isaac to be able to share a little bit about, traditional treatment and sort of in preparation for that. And then I'll connect with the panelists just after Isaac speaks a little bit about.
Oh, Miigwech, thank you. So I know that years ago, when somebody was sick, oftentimes, especially during the plagues, a special lodge was made for them, and that the family would take care of that person that way. Especially, when we have cluster housing complexes, when we have overcrowding in houses, what happens when somebody actually gets sick in the house and they have COVID-19? And so maybe their symptoms are not bad, maybe they are bad. Say that the healthcare system has been completely taxed. What do you do? Because this is a real situation. And so what I've been suggesting and what has been done in the past is that if you have healthy people in the house, and we have to try to get the numbers down in the houses. And so one part of the community response is to start making temporary shelters for people, for healthy people to go live in. Because that way, if somebody does get sick and they're in the household, it's not going to get to everybody. And of course, we all know that, the healthcare providers, traditional healthcare providers, or Western medicine healthcare providers, all of those frontline workers are always more at risk of getting the illness. And so, of course, this does displace a burden. Many of our healers, they die early of this. And, you know, but it's also part of the sacrifice that they do. They give their life for the people. And so people have to be mindful of that too when you ask for help. But I would like to explore and ask the other panelists, if somebody is sick inside the house, like how do you manage that? Because it's contagious. And so I know, like I was saying before, long ago, they would make these lodges for sick people. And, you know, and I think that even today, when a healthcare system might not be able to accommodate a sick person, you know, how do we do it effectively when people don't have rubber gloves, when they don't have masks, when, you know, there is no essential services? Because realistically, a lot of First Nations communities might be facing this situation. And again, I think we have to go back to our culture, our teachings, and our language to understand how to do that. And of course, ceremony. And so I would like to pose the question to the other panelists, you know, what happens if somebody gets sick in the house? Because I think that this is like a really important question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Thank you so much for bringing up that point. So we're actually discussing this at Kiiwin Health Services right now because of the unique challenges and circumstances we find ourselves in living in our communities. Oftentimes there's overcrowding. And it's interesting, Isaac, that you brought that up about people having their own space and lodge, because what we're exploring in the context of house overcrowding is if someone does need to be isolated or if they become sick in their house with COVID-19 specifically, that we're looking at of using the school gym to house people in there with cots and, you know, different things to make them comfortable to wait out their period of as they recover from the illness. And it's amazing to see the community come together around this, where people are already starting to talk about having hunting parties and different things like that to go out and get food for people so that they can eat during this time as well and have supplies. So I think probably other communities are looking at that as well, as where to put sick people that will prevent the easy spread in an overcrowded housing situation. And so thanks for bringing that up. And I think people are curious about my shirt. So I'm just gonna, these are the shirts that we wore on this show. Anthony had designed this to talk about the importance of water. There's a big story behind it. It's on our fan page. You can go at Timagamema on Facebook, and proceeds go to building a Cree Cultural Healing Center at Kiiwin Cree Nation. GoFundMe.com/RestoreHarmony is the website.
Hi. So just recently, people may have seen on the news that there was a block at before you go into Tofino in the Tloquit Hahuthe, and the hereditary chief was stopping what would be incoming people going to visit, to go to the resorts, and letting them know if they're not from there to turn back and to go home. Again, in the Hausa territory, the hereditaries have and the band have blocked access, because when we're talking about community work, about community care, and it's very remote. They're on Flores Island, so they can do that. And so I guess when any of the family members want to come, they would probably look at doing a similar quarantine in one house, and they're able to take care of the whole community that way, and limit access coming in and out of these remote communities, because we're so communal. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting. That happened yesterday here on the West Coast.
Jeff, do you have any responses?
Yes,
like what people are doing?
I think one of the things that is inevitable, I would refer to inevitable. We are in a time that we need to retransition back to the land. And if it takes this illness for us to reconnect with the land, so it's a good thing, you know. I have to always look at a positive thing. One of the things that I went out. I'm pretty tired out today because I went and harvested a moose yesterday, and I'm still well connected. Tomorrow we're gonna go set nets and for that fish. One of the things that I always want to encourage people, that there's a brighter side to things. We need to be able to see the light beyond what's happening. And I think that's the message that I want to put out there, is that there's light beyond this darkness that's overcoming us. One of the things that I always remember, that we didn't isolate one individual that was sick. They took precautionary measures, even in a time, because all these animals that are on our lands, we utilize them because they eat the land. They eat the medicines of the land, and in turn we eat them, and they become a part of us. One of the things that I was made understood about the non-indigenous foods, such as pigs, bacon, and whatnot, the chickens, you know, and it tends to push us this way. And this is one of the prophecies. I always refer back to the prophecies. When you see a caged animal, you know, when an animal is caged and you eat it, you consume it, you become part of that encagement of your spirit. This is where oppression, depression begins to set in. One of the things that we were taught when somebody was sick was they took a spoon and they told us how to take this medicine, especially the fish broth. And they would take it and they would actually go like this, almost breathe it in and sip on this fish broth. It would make this sound, because that spirit now enters you of that water life. And then again, we ask this particular animal to continue to take over that life, so it'll give you strength. And those are the positive notes that we have to look at, instead of this, you know, we have to isolate you to this. You know, this is one thing that I will never isolate myself from my grandchildren or my children. If they could get sick, we're going to work this together. And that's the coming together, because right now, you know, what's being experienced. Oh, this woman traveled out of the country, we got to isolate her. What's she doing in the store? We always, you know, label somebody, and we cannot label our people, because we are a people of collective. We are a collective nation. We cannot single anybody out, just like the system out there, they single people out. We as peoples of this land, we cannot single anybody out. We have to collectively come as a nation and look at this holistical process of healing our people. So that's why we don't leave anybody out. We don't go lock them in a room because they have a virus. Here, it's holistically. We're going to face this together as one people. And that's the way our Creator meant us to be. One people. So with that, I leave you with that note.
Thank you, Jeff. I know that we're coming to the end. We want to wrap stuff up, but there was a question, and I just wanted to offer it up to James. Can you get COVID again? So if you get it, you're confirmed, and you get over it, can you get it again? Because there's been some reports about that.
Yeah, so the science around this is still evolving as the virus, you know, more people contract the virus and things like that, and studies are being published. There have been a couple of cases where people have got reinfected with COVID, and they're not sure if it was because it was impartially or not entirely treated infection, and then they went out and got another one, or it came back. So at this point, you know, there is a couple instances in the literature of that happening, which it just stresses the importance and point of washing your hands, following the guidelines from public health of not going out, you know, not being in contact with people that are high risk, like children and elders and things like that. And if you have any cold symptoms or influenza-like symptoms, to stay at home and not share that with anyone else who are at most risk and vulnerable.
Thank you so much. You know, there's a lot of really great resources coming. This is, as Dr. James said, our Makokas, not Dr. James, maybe maybe Dr. James, Dr. Makoka said, is that this is still evolving day by day. And that means that like our knowledge holders are people that are connected to spirit. They're also learning about this too. So we have to have patience for our healers, because they don't have immediate answers either. And we have to really think about where our medicines are and like talk to people when you can. Pick up the phone, have a FaceTime. If you're out picking berries and you got the ability, like take pictures, send them back. Say, is this the right medicine I can pick? While keeping those social distancing together. But there's lots of things happening. I just want to sort of give a plug to the Indigenous Environmental Network and Indigenous Media Rising. Tomorrow is also hosting a webinar. Their webinar is called Indian Country and COVID-19. And so this is our brothers and sisters to the south of the medicine line in the so-called United States. They're having their own, you know, it's a very different reality in the United States. But a lot of the same questions and conversations I'm sure will come up. They've got a really great lineup, including an ethnobotanist, an Indigenous ethnobotanist, the CEO of National Indian Health Board, as well as a doctor to discuss like what this means for communities there that are dealing with really, really disparaging challenges of access to health. But you know, they have a completely failing infrastructure in the United States right now. So it'll be interesting. I encourage you all to check that out. ICA will also be sharing this video, recording it and posting it up on our blog on our website, so you can come back and look at it later. And we're going to be looking at hosting some more webinars to dig deeper into these discussions. Like, what does it mean for us to protect our lands and our medicines in a time of COVID? When we have folks on the front lines right now, including our brothers and sisters in the Wet'suwet'en territory that are still faced with this pipeline proposal, or, you know, the continued deforestation or Alton gas or the expansion of the Alberta tar sands or the TMX pipeline. These are all threatening those very ecosystems that house the medicines that we're all talking about here. So we really have to look at ways in which we are not just protecting our communities and our personal health, because our personal health is deeply connected to the health and well-being of our land and our animals and our brothers and sisters and our relatives that are not human. Our two-legged, our winged ones, our fish, our bugs, the grass and the medicines and the plants and the trees. And it's really important that we continue to have this conversation and recognizing, yes, go back into land, get dirty. You don't have to keep your hands clean out on the land, as Natana said, but be safe, as Dr. Makoka said, and listen to our elders, as Jeff said. And really, I love what Isaac is doing out in the land, but we have to protect our communities. And that looks like some of us shutting off people coming in. In some cases, it's isolating ourselves. In other cases, it's really preparing and building those lodges to take care of our sick. And in some communities, they're sending out their hunters, fishers, trappers. Alexis Nakota First Nation just announced that they're going to send out their hunters to go collect and harvest, to give the food to the elders, the single families with mothers with young children. These are the collective responses that are grounded in our values as Indigenous peoples. These are the things that will help keep us calm and keep our spirits calm. And you know, we might not all have the sit your ass down tea that Natanis has, but we have our cultures and the people in our communities that can help us find out what those medicines are, to help us sit ourselves down, calm ourselves down, and respond to this collectively and safely. And so I really, really want to say a huge thank you to all of the profound knowledge that has been shared on this panel today. The time that you've taken to share this knowledge, not just with us as the moderators, but with the community at large that feels scared, that for answers. And there's lots of questions. So I'm going to share some of these questions with the panelists, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, ICA will continue to try to respond to some of these questions about medicines and practices and stories, and we'll continue to move forward, moving through this in the most appropriate way. And so I want to give every panelist like a moment to just say thank you, hi, merci cho, whatever the thank yous are in your language, and thank you for your time. So if you want to just say a final word, I would love a fun.
Hi, ko kinogagi mentuhta mega notes. I just want to thank everybody that took time out to listen. And again, we have hope, and this is the hope that we're coming here to share with our hope with the rest of the listening audience. And again, hi, 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 hi.
Thank you to everyone. It was such a pleasure to be on the panel with you all. And I just wanted to, say a quick, if there are American listeners, I know that the American government right now is slow to respond to this, and that the number of cases are going to rise exponentially. That doesn't mean that you and your family and your nation can't follow the same recommendations that are happening here. As you saw, the border is closed to non-essential travels going into the States. So please be careful, please protect your families and take this seriously. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to tune in, and we got this. As Indigenous people, we've been through this before, and we have the knowledge, and we have the strength and the courage to get through this together. We don't have to fear this. This is something that's happening, and this is something that the earth is doing, and it's the way it is. But as earth people, we're going to survive. So again, go back to your traditional knowledges, listen to the sciences that are out there. But the main thing is have fun, sing your songs, dance, tell your stories, do your language. Take this time to reflect on who you are as an Indigenous person and what you can do in the future to contribute to this great mystery that we're all in. Now, give me what you're going, Mama Pigwab and Minwa. Now.
Yeah, I just want to say it's sunny outside. I feel like it's really cold, and I can't wait to go outside and take my kids out and again connect with the land, maybe go to the ocean, give our thanks and our gratitude. And I'm so thankful to be on this panel with some wonderful speakers. And I'd love to see, I almost seen like a fire in the center, and Jeff just talking, and we all kind of curled up in our house and listen to stories. Can we do that? I love it. And Isaac, thank you. And James, all you guys, I thank you for this morning, and I look forward to the afternoon and the evening with my children. So, chew.
And just really quickly before we sign off, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, and just to give a little bit of voice to all of our non-human relatives, who are preparing for their year. We're going to be relying on them a lot this year, and so I just wanted to encourage everybody to to give that thanks to them, and to prepare your offerings in a good way, just so that we're also thinking about them too, as well, to our educators and all of our people who are taking time to teach the language over the internet and to share their stories and their songs. Just say miigwech for all of that community care that's showing up in these times.